handful or two of times, not very often. It just hardly doesn't happen. Because as soon as we get our diet and lifestyle right, because we have a condition because we're off in our diet and lifestyle somewhere. When I take them to the foundation of their problem, then their problem goes away. And as a researcher, I know what's in the research. I have spent years looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of research articles. So I know what the Bible says. I know what the Spirit of Prophecy says. I've dedicated my career to learning and understanding these books and how we are to remedy our diseases, because there's going to be a time that we are we're not going to be able to run to a doctor, whether it's a naturopath or whether it's a Western medicine doctor. We're going to have to now go to God's remedies, and He's got tons of them. But most of us don't see any of them. We don't even think of the book as remedies. But do you know how many remedies are in these two books alone? This is Counsels on Diet and Foods. This one is Counsels on the Dangers of Prescription Drugs. Do you know how many remedies are right here? And if we learn to read these books and actually apply them, not just have knowledge, because that's the Church of Laodicea, right? We have knowledge. The Church of Laodicea has knowledge, but we don't apply it. The key is applying it, what we know. And it's to not backslide. It's not to be sloppy with our principles. Well, once a year, I have this, and I know I'm not supposed to, but it's okay. I just do it on my birthday or Christmas or Thanksgiving or, when my Aunt Glee sees me and she's made something special for me. But what we learned from Jesus' 40 days of fasting, I wish I would have had more time to talk about that this morning, but Daniel and his 3 friends and Jesus, all 4 of these men teach us it's death before dishonor. And it means that we starve before we make any compromise. It's a life of no compromise. Because, see, we live post-1844. The Lord's coming back. We're in the middle of trying to make the 144,000. And what does He want? No compromise. A no compromise life. Not even one time. Jesus, Daniel, and his 3 friends all were willing to die for the health message. And Jesus almost got starved to death. He was probably a day, hours away from death, that the angels had to minister to him. They had to lift his head probably and feed the food to him to lift him up. He was so weak. He was so emaciated. He was unrecognizable. That's where God's trying to take us. That they're going to have 5 big men to hold me down in order to get something in my mouth that should not be there. That's the no compromise life. That's where God's trying to take us. Well, I know that there's a little bit of cinnamon, in this granola, and it's the very last ingredient. It's okay. Oh, vinegar is the very last ingredient in this bread recipe, in this ingredients list. It's okay. It's probably only a teaspoon per loaf. God says, no compromise at all. See, again, we're not trying to work our way to heaven through how we eat. But we do have to work with heaven in order to know there are conditions if we want salvation. And part of and I'm only focusing on diet. So there's all sorts of things that we have to abide by. But I happen to focus just on diet because our people don't really understand the importance of it. They think health reform is just a good idea. But it's not just a good idea. I don't think that there's anyone in this room that has missed that Satan is running around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. I mean, we all recognize that. He's the arch deceiver. He's the arch liar. He's the enemy of God, and he's the enemy of God's people. He is the enemy of God's love letter to the world. And this is a love letter. Yes, there are unfortunate times for people who have been eliminated along the way. But God always knows, He's always got the big picture in mind. And instead of looking at through our human eyes, where we have a tendency to say, what a tyrant, or that was really mean, how about looking at it from God's point of view? Why did He do that? He doesn't do anything arbitrarily. He's always got a reason, and if He's going to do that unnatural act of end the life of a person, He's got a reason, if they're evil. He calls upon every single human being who's ever lived, who is living, and whoever will live, multiple times throughout their life. Countless times He calls them. And He tries to convict them. He's constantly drawing them to Him. But it's, are we listening? And when God foresees that this person is committing so much evil, and that there's nothing that I can do to bring them to me, sometimes that's the outcome. If they've ever been laid to rest, to be raised in the first resurrection, or the second resurrection, I'm sorry, then there's a reason. It's because God knew that they would never come to Him, after the 1,000 years. I just want to, last week we went through it, but I kind of want to go through it just very briefly again in Genesis. We go through, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but what I am going to say is in overview, Genesis 11, God says He's going to bring forth this fruit and this food. In 12, He does bring it. In 29, He says, this is your food, Genesis 1:29. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat, or for food. And then, in case we missed it, He says in 2:16, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou may freely eat. It's a command, so He's commanded us. We see that this is, if you have your Bible open, I want you to circle that word command. And the Lord God commanded. This is a command. This is not a suggestion. Genesis 2:16. Because I like to pull out these words that so many times we just kind of fly by and really don't stop and think about them. How many times have we read this and never once stopped to think of the word command? Probably most of the time, if never. So when we pull that out, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess there is something to this. It's the command. And then if you pop down into 3, 1 through 4, now the serpent was more subtle. We went through this last week. So we see that God's ideal diet for mankind is a high fruit diet. That's the tree that has the seed in the fruit. So we see that in 3:1, now the serpent was more subtle than the beast of the field, which all the Lord God had made. So we've got the warning, and in the same verse, we've got the topic of what He's going to lie about, and that's about diet. It's about temperance. It's about trust. But see, it's not just about diet, it's obedience. You see, there was nothing that was wrong with that tree, right? It was just as beautiful, it was just as healthy, it was just as magnificent in grandeur as any other tree. There was nothing that was unhealthy or unfit about that tree for it to be in the garden. God did not give us health reform to be healthy or to have longevity. We already had health and longevity in the garden, but it was removed from us through one simple test. It was the most simplest test that God could have created on the face of the earth. And did you know that when Adam sinned, that he wasn't even hungry? See, this is all about obedience. It was simply that God said, don't eat of that one tree. So it's not about health and longevity, it's about obedience. We are going to obey the one that we love. This is not a way that we've really thought about health reform before. But this is the foundation. This is the Elijah message. It's the Elijah message, and we're missing it. It's the red carpet of our salvation. It gives God a fighting chance to save us through our diet, that we may have clear thinking. Because if we don't have clear thinking, we will eventually make a wrong decision. Diet is a moral issue. We don't think of it as a moral issue, but it's very clear right here in Genesis, it's a moral issue. Because what is morality? It tells us what's right or wrong. And right there in the garden, God said no to that one tree. It's a moral issue. It's just as binding as everything in the Ten Commandments. And in fact, last night, I have almost completed a new sermon about how that one sin in the garden broke all 10 commandments. Every single one is broke. And I'm coming up with Bible verses, with spirit of prophecy. I mean, I've got it all written out. And it's amazing how that one sin broke all 10 commandments. And I'll share that in the public someday, soon. So we have Satan telling Eve, oh, it's okay, you aren't going to die. Even though I know God says you're going to die, but I'm telling you you're not going to. Because you're not going to. He's just jealous that you're going to know the difference between good and evil. That's all, you know. And don't you want to know more than what God has? He's putting you in this little tiny box, and he doesn't want you to know all this other stuff that I know. And see, that's what we're doing. We constantly go outside the box thinking that we know something more than God. So we're told right there what the topic is, and it's about diet. And he's still beguiling us today thinking that we're not going to die. Not only the first physical death, but we have the audacity to think that we are going to be saved in our sins. That's presumption. We know that we're doing something wrong, and we just assume that God's going to save us. But yet we're told that we can't even have one darling sin, and that's going to keep us out of heaven. We've got to start seeing this in a whole new way. We've got to take our relationship to a whole new level, understanding our responsibility before a holy God. And he wants to take us far. And then we see that in 2 or 3:11, that God says, have you eaten of the tree, the only tree that I told you not to, that I commanded you not to? And then in 17, because you disobeyed the only command that I've given you, I've cursed the ground for your sake. Then if you go on into 22:2, it says, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. From Genesis to Revelation, okay, Genesis, Revelation, and God has constantly been trying to get us back to the Garden of Eden diet. Somewhere, so there were a few times when God went outside of that, like Leviticus 11, where God gave the clean and unclean meats. But what was happening is because the Israelites were so rebellious and they wanted their meat anyway, and God's like, okay, if I can't get you to eat the way that I want you to, all right, and you're going to do it anyway, even against my will, then I will give you now clean meats. It wasn't his original will for us. He just gave it to us under those conditions for a specified time of history, say Genesis, and then we've got the flood, and then we've got Leviticus 11, and then we've got the Exodus, and even in the Exodus, before Leviticus 11, God is trying to bring them back to manna. You see that? They kept wanting the flesh pots of Egypt. And God's like, no. See, the first time that he brought quail, he winced, right? Nothing happened. That's because God does not condemn us for something that we don't know. They didn't know. They'd been in captivity for 400 years. They did not know God. He was now trying to teach them to now trust in him again. And so nothing happened. The next morning, manna came. Short while later, oh, God, is this all we have? Is this manna? Oh, it's just manna again. We want the flesh pots of Egypt. And what happened? Many walked back. The mixed multitudes walked back. That means many of God's people. I wish I had time to do Nebuchadnezzar, because this is like prophetic. This is amazing when we look at Nebuchadnezzar and what he went through. Prophetic for our time today as Adventists and where we are heading into the wilderness. And that was an all raw diet. But listen to my talk on YouTube. You can also, I just got my website up just like this past week since I've been here in Hawaii. So I've been working a lot. And you can find it on my YouTube or my web page as well. ProgressivelyRaw.com. You can just go there. It's not near done, but at least it's up. It's going to have a whole new format, and I'm going to add a bunch of stuff. But at least those videos are up, and there's just something about me and what I do. But this is when we look at the progression. We can look through the progression of the Bible. Okay, plant-based diet, whole food, plant-based, unrefined, high fruit diet. Okay, after sin, he added vegetables. After the flood, there was no greenery left. So he said, okay, and because you guys are obstinate, I'm going to give you Leviticus 11, but that's only temporary. And then we have different diets. So now they're under the Nazirite vow, and with no alcohol, no pigs, and all of that. And then you've got John the Baptist with his diet. You've got Jesus with his diet. You see how we're kind of moving this way, right? So wherever we are in history, whether we're in the Garden of Eden or in Revelation heading home, God has never given his people carte blanche to eat however they want. Never. All the way from the Garden of Eden, never have they been given carte blanche to eat however they want. But wherever we are, or wherever people are in history, that's the law of heaven that they're under at that particular time. We are not under the Nazirite vow right now. We are in 1844. We are now kind of, I don't even know what to call it, the law of 1844, antitypical Day of Atonement. I don't know what to call it. But now we have a different message of 1844 of fasting, and that permanent fast that I read earlier this morning. That permanent fast is to eat of the most simple diet, nothing that is stimulating, and we are confined to a particular diet. And when we look back at the Garden of Eden, it sure looks pretty similar. Now, we are somewhere in between. If you think about Daniel, he had the whole food, plant-based, cooked diet. And 3 chapters later, in Daniel 4, we move to the whole food, plant-based, raw Nebuchadnezzar diet. And then what's the next step? Heaven. What's going to be between now and heaven? The next place where God's going to take us is out in the wilderness when we get run from our homes, right? So how are we going to eat in the wilderness? What do we think God's going to feed us? Manna. Raw food. Exactly. It's going to be the diet of Nebuchadnezzar. Grass is sprouts. Exactly. But it's more than that. It's actually what oxen eat. They eat fruits, nuts, seeds. They eat sprouts. And you know, this is their diet. They eat berries. They eat all sorts of stuff, and that's what Nebuchadnezzar ate. And the next step, you see, if diet is our test, then we must be tested too. Before the Israelites were tested, Adam and Eve was tested, John the Baptist was tested, many people were tested, we will be too. We are being tested today. When we get out to the wilderness during the Exodus, how are we going to respond? Oh, Lord, is that all you're giving me? Are these 5 bananas? Oh, come on. I want the flesh pots of Egypt. I want my clean food. I want my clean meat. I want my fish. I want my brags. I want my MSG, Lord. Where is my cinnamon? Where's my black pepper? Where is my vinegar, Lord? I'm really missing that flavor. And so diet isn't going to, we don't get lost because of our diet. It's a consequence. We will choose to walk back to the world again. It's a choice, just like the Israelites did. They chose to walk back to the flesh pots of Egypt. And when we're out there in the wilderness and we're being tested with 5 bananas, are we going to say, wow, God, thank you so much. I am so grateful. You grew these for me for this particular meal. Thank you. Or are we going to say, oh, come on. I just want my potato chips again. They're vegan, Lord. You know, when we really kind of break it down like that, all of a sudden it kind of starts to click, right? So our next step is going to be the Nebuchadnezzar diet, because that's the diet of heaven, is Nebuchadnezzar. And that happened at the end of his life, like it's going to happen at the end of history.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there going to be any cooking in heaven?
Cookies.
No, cooking.
I do not believe there will be any cooking.
Okay.
There'll be no cooking. It's going to be a high, fruit diet again.
What about starch?
There will be no starches.
Starches, okay.
So what I want to do, so you kind of got that, right? That wherever we are in history, Genesis, Revelation, we have a guideline for our diet, right? And our guideline since 1844 is not the same as the Levitical law or any other time in history. Because, see, we're heading home. So God is trying to bring us back again to the beginning. Jesus had to start his ministry where the ruin began. So do we. If we want to gain heaven back again, it's through diet. Because that's our way of thinking. And again, I want to say again, we can never eat our way to heaven. I say that again and again because people have this thing in their minds that this is by works. Never do I espouse works. They must be with Jesus. Our motive must be him. As I said last week in the heavenly sanctuary in the body temple, I recognize that I am the temple of God. I've been bought with a high price, and I owe my existence to him. And if I'm going to call myself a Christian, I honor him by eating the way that he tells me I need to eat. And you can have that for anything. everything becomes a salvational issue when we start to look at God is trying to lead us somewhere. If I am, say I'm a hothead, like I used to be, and God is trying to tame my anger, and I just want to say, God, anger isn't a salvational issue. So I'm going to continue being angry. You see how now all of a sudden it becomes a salvational issue? But see, it's not by works, but humanity and divinity must work together. That's what the book of James is all about. It's working together. Show me your faith without your works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. It must be together. We must have strict obedience. We must have perfect love and perfect faith. And let him do it in us, because it's not me doing it. It's I'm calling out for him, and as I draw closer to him through the word, through study, through prayer, now I'm getting closer to him, and automatically these sins start to just fall off. Now it becomes no problem, and now that's how we live above the law. Because I'm no longer in this struggle. But while I'm struggling, I'm under the law. When that struggle's gone, I live above the law. I don't have a desire to carjack anybody. I can live above the law. But see, we're living under the law when I want to do that. Or if I want to eat something that is forbidden by God's people. See, now I'm under the law. Does that make sense? And to live above the law means eventually that I would rather die than sin. That there's no pull to sin anymore. But that takes practice. But see, it's God doing it in us. It's him finishing the good work that he's begun. So keep in mind that the health message, health reformation, is the right arm of the gospel. It's not the gospel. Let's keep the gospel, and let's keep the right arm. Let's not make diet the gospel. It's the foundation of our salvation. It's the red carpet for us understanding closeness with God, having a better, clearer mind and understanding. So we see that wherever we are in history, that's our diet. That is assigned to us. That's why Jesus could still eat meat. And see, Jesus and John the Baptist, they were that dividing point between, Jesus especially was that dividing point between the two economies, right? Between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there we have John the Baptist right there with health reform. So we had health reform right there, right with Jesus. But see, John is New Testament. Jesus is the dividing point. John is clearly in the New Testament, and that's our diet. He is that representative on earth for our diet today. It didn't really come into play until 1844. Yes?
Can you, please, before you go on, explain, we hear that sugar feeds cancer cells. Now, when you eat a lot of fruit, you're taking in fructose.
I'm going to answer that question.
Yay.
Yes. So let's move on. So what are some of the properties of fruit? So we see throughout history, God has never changed the diet. He never said in the Garden of Eden that after sin, that I don't want you now to eat fruit. It's always been Genesis to Revelation. It's a high fruit diet. There's been times when that has slightly changed, but he's always trying to get us back to that again. So here's some properties of fruit that is not in, that creates so much health for us. I'm giving you the recipe in how I treat my clients when they come to me. I'm giving you my recipe right here. So if you're looking to help somebody else or yourself through any kind of conditions or symptoms or anything, I'm giving you my recipe right here. I'm going to show you what I do. So properties of fruit that is so healthy, and we have to have these in if we want to reverse or prevent disease. So the fruit has phytochemicals, antioxidants, bioflavonoids, vitamins, minerals, fiber. It's got no cholesterol, no saturated fat. It's low in sodium, and it's very low in fat and calories compared to other food groups next to vegetables. It is high in simple carbohydrates, and it's simple carbohydrates that our body actually wants to run off of. It's what our body does run off of. It's simple carbohydrates. Starches are not simple carbohydrates, they are a complex carbohydrate. And they're treated in the body quite differently. So there's a difference, and in all fruit, many times people say, well, you know, I mean, we have a tendency really to think that fruit has no value to it, when God says differently. All fruit has all amino acids in it. It used to be thought a few decades ago that fruit had very little or no amino acids, no protein at all. And then it was discovered, well, there are a few amino acids, but they're not complete proteins. But now, as of the last few years, we know every single fruit has every single amino acid. It does. Some may be higher, and it might be really low in another amino acid. Another fruit may be really high where that one's low, and it may be low where that one was high. But it's all got, you know, that gradient of amino acids. They all have all amino acids. So it's good to know that all fruit has all amino acids. And did you know that there are professional athletes that are on a high fruit diet? And they get their protein from fruit and greens. We can eat fruit in abundance with less concern of weight gain. It eliminates toxins at a cellular level. Because of that special fruit juice that's actually in the fruit, and like all of those nectarines or peaches or plums that we like to eat, all of that natural fruit juice gets into the cellular levels and actually cleanses out, and it detoxes like no other food can. It is calorically life-sustaining. Now, there are incidences where people are on a 100% fruit diet and they eat nothing else. No greens, no nuts, no grains, nothing. Only fruit. And there are some occasions where some people can eat like that very healthfully. But you have to live on an island like Hawaii, or you have to be somewhere where you can actually pick fruit from a tree, and where you can get all the nutrients that you pick fruit directly from the tree and you eat it that day. When our food is getting transported, 1,000 miles away, we lose a lot of nutrients. It gets picked too ripe. Not ripe enough.
They radiate it when it comes into the state too.
They irradiate it, some of it if it's not organic. And so there's a big difference in where this can happen. And I follow a few of them. And that's all they eat is just fruit. And they've been doing this for years successfully. As long as we get enough calories. Now, for the rest of us who don't have that, the amino acids that are missing are few. You'll be low in a few of the amino acids and in a few of the minerals. And you know what makes it up? Greens. So if you just add greens and fruit with just a sprinkle of nuts or seeds, you literally have the Nebuchadnezzar diet. You've got the ultimate detox diet. And now you get everything that you need.
Can you mix the two together in a meal?
I believe that there were greens in the Garden of Eden. And so when it comes to other vegetables, though, then like the root vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, those things should not be mixed together. But also, when we look at the spirit of prophecy, there's 4 or 5 times that she says don't mix them together. And she's very clear about that, but she also says that in one or two places that if you don't have stomach problems or digestive problems. So you have to see what works for you. And so I can't make that as a blanket statement, black, white, yes, no, right, wrong. I know that there are plenty of our people who do make that into an issue, but I don't see that. I don't see that it's like a never, never mix them. Now, if we have a responsibility, if we have problems, then we should never mix them, because then that would be creating fermentation or other issues that our body's going to create. So it's per person, but I, as a general rule, always keep them apart from each other. But the greens and fruit have been amazing in healing thousands, if not millions of people. It's amazing how mixing the two together, now you've gotten everything that you need. It eliminates cravings because of that natural fruit again. When people are into cravings or addictions, I already automatically know, because of my knowledge, that they are not eating enough fruit. So if you're dealing with any kind of addictions or any kind of cravings, more fruit. And even vegetables don't get rid of those generally. There's no other food group that has the nutrient panel of fruit. Not even vegetables. Not even greens. There's nothing. There is no group, no food group that is more nourishing than fruit. It's rich with fiber, vitamins A, C, folate, potassium, calcium, and iron.
I have a question, Dr. Unruh.
Yes.
Do you recommend eating different varieties of fruits at one sitting, like 3, 4, 5?
So our council says not to eat too many. For some reason, this isn't changing. If someone could advance that for me. So our council says not, if you have problems again, it says not too many. She doesn't ever specify. So I don't know, what's not too many? 5 or 6, in a fruit salad or something? I mean, that would be like my definition. But don't go by my definition. That's just what I think. But I would say 5 or 6. Once we start getting into, 10, 15 different kinds of fruits, I mean, we could start to a war in our stomach. All right, so now these are properties that are either low or non-existent in animal products, but they are very high in plant products. Vitamin C, E, K, B9, B7. You see, we can't live healthfully on an animal-based diet because of a lack of these nutrients. And that's why we can live healthfully on an all-raw diet like Nebuchadnezzar. He was on that diet for 7 years. That's the ultimate detox diet. And yet, when some of our people want to go all raw, some of us have a problem with that. What do we say? Oh, you're too extreme. You know what I say to that? Go back to the author. I get it from Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel 4. There's no flavonoids, there's no antioxidants, there's no anti-inflammatory properties, there's no fiber, there's no complex carbohydrates, there's no chlorophyll, there's no prebiotics, sulforaphane, magnesium, or natural nitrates. There's none of those in animal products, or very, very low, that it might as well be non-existent. We must have these in order to be healthy. So why do I call this Satan's War on Fruit? Clicker's not working again. If you could advance that. Thank you. I call this Satan's War on Fruit because most of us probably have heard of it but didn't really think about it this way. The Atkins diet, the South Beach, Zone, protein, power, eat for your blood type, ketogenic, paleo, carnivore diet, and then how many ever other diets are out there that are meat-based. That's war on God's diet right there. And yet, how many of our people go to this diet when they are trying to heal instead of going to the Bible and the spirit of prophecy? Are we going towards what our itching ears want to hear with this diet? Oh, I'm willing to give up my fruit in order to have my meat, but I'm not willing to give up my meat to have a high fruit diet. That's often how we think. So we have to really re-educate our mind. But this is Satan's war on fruit. So there are misconceptions about fruit out there. Don't eat bananas and grapes. They're going to make you fat with carb overload. I don't know. For probably 30 years, I've had at least one banana every single day, if not 7 or 8 in a day. And if that were true, I'd have to be on a weight loss program. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know where some people come up with this information. Don't eat mangoes and cherries. They have too much sugar. There's a difference between white sugar and fruit sugar. They are just not even the same. White sugar is a pure carbohydrate, no fat, no protein. It's only pure, simple carbohydrate. But our food industry would like us to believe that they are exactly the same thing because they're both simple sugars. We have, on the other side, we have, you see, the definition of food. It must have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and then the other macronutrient, which doesn't really offer calories, is fiber. It's got to have all 4 of those. Does white sugar fit that definition? It does not fit that definition. White sugar will deplete our body of our B vitamins. And our B vitamins are our happy vitamins. All of the B's are our happy vitamins. And yet it's depleted. So that makes me think, I'm a certified Nedley program director. How many people in those depression and anxiety programs do you think eat sugar? All of them. We get to see the link pretty quickly between diet and how we feel. But what about fruit now? Fruit has vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, bioflavonoids. It's got the carbohydrates, protein, fat, and fiber. It's got all of this wonderful stuff. How is it that the world has gotten us to think that a Twinkie is the same thing as an apple? But we've believed the lie. We've believed it as if it's true, and if you have cancer, if you have diabetes, if you have fungal disease, if you have athlete's foot, don't take fruit. Oh, no, don't take fruit because it's got too much sugar in it. But that's what we're taught. But that's not God's way. Cranberries will cause kidney stones, and I think that's interesting because whenever people have kidney problems or bladder problems, we go to cranberries. Oranges can erode tooth enamel, and if that were true, I'd have no teeth left. Yeah, imagine that. We listen to God first. Don't eat limes because it can give you a rash or interfere with medications. And then the next one, don't eat leafy greens because it interferes with medications. Now, as a nurse and having people with diabetes and coagulation problems, many of them be on medications like Coumadin or something, and to help with coagulation or lack of. And so they tell you not to have greens. And I'm thinking, now isn't that interesting? They tell us to take drugs, but don't take something that's healthy. Don't take greens because it's going to kill you. So what I would do with my clients is I would call their coag nurse. and I'd say, okay, look, we have a common client here that we need to work together. Their goal is to get off their medication. They're trying to improve their health. You and I have to work for the betterment of this client that we have here. So, see, the problem isn't the greens itself technically. The problem is that we go like this. You know, I'm going to have a salad every single day, and I'm doing really good all week, and then I run out of greens, and I don't get to the grocery store for another week, and now I don't have any greens, and then I get there, and oh yeah, I'm going to have a big salad again, and for the next 3 days I have a big salad, and I'm doing really good, and then I go on vacation, and then I get no greens again. See, that's the problem. So I would have to have the client sign a contract saying, okay, this is a deal. We have to work together with your coag nurse. She's not our enemy, you know, but we have to engage her in helping us. So they've agreed that as long as you keep, because see, their job is just to keep the numbers stable, right? And my goal is a little bit different. My goal is to get them healthy, to get off of their drugs. So I say, okay, I make my client sign a contract saying every single day you must have a consistent amount of greens. And that's how you work around it. It's not that they're having greens, it's that it's very inconvenient that every time you go in to get your blood checked and it's just all over the place because greens are all over the place because they work against each other. And so we because of the vitamin K that is in greens. And so we have to have the client maintain a high amount of greens so the coag nurse is happy because now her numbers look good. And then as they get more greens, and now we start, because we obviously have to get more fruit in them and less cooked food, less meat, and now and then things kind of balance out and the coag nurse is happy, the patient's happy, I'm happy, and now we're kind of working together. Now, not everybody, I have to always educate these coag nurses because they don't know any of this stuff. But, you know, if you're loving and kind and patient and tactful with them, they're more than happy to work with you. So it's amazing. Don't eat strawberries because they're bad for the environment. Let me talk to you about this one. This is serious because okay, there's I'm sure that some of you might be, because there's truth to this. But I want to explain what's going on. This is Satan's war on fruit. This is, how is it correct? There's the Environmental Working Group. Are you familiar with them? The EWG.org, the Environmental Working Group, every single year, they go from coast to coast here in the U.S., and they just go to box stores, grocery stores, and they just pick the fruit. And so from every store, they pick oranges, every store they pick strawberries and greens and you know, onions and carrots, whatever else they pick. And so they choose like 35 or 40 different fruits and vegetables. And they test to see which one has more pesticides on it, and strawberries always come up as number one for many years. Strawberries are so incredibly toxic when they're non-organic that you can juice them and spray them on a field and they become pesticide. But yet, I will never tell somebody don't eat non-organic strawberries. Never. Why? It's because of the word bioaccumulation. Because see, if God says fruit is our diet, then we have to start thinking outside the box of more than what the media or someone else is telling us. When we start to understand the word bioaccumulation, and let me demonstrate it to you. I'm going to demonstrate it to you through fish. You got little fish this big, and they just happily live out their lives in schools, and they live to be 5 years old, and every single day they build up toxins because our oceans are so incredibly toxic now that every single day their body builds up toxins. It stores in their fat cells and in their muscle cells. You can't take it out. You can't cook it out. You can't freeze it out. It's just there. Now, so these little fish all have 5 years of toxins in them. Now you got a fish this big, and this fish, I don't know, how many little fish do they eat a day? I don't know, 20? I'm just going to throw out a word, 20. And so now this bigger fish now eats 20 of those little fish every single day, and this fish lives 5 years. That means 5 years of eating all of those little fish that have their own toxins, and now it accumulates in their toxins, in their cells. Now you got a fish this big that eats 5 of those fish a day of that next smaller size, and it lives to 5 years, and this one lives to 5 years, and so now all of the 5 years that these little ones accumulate in this one now accumulates in this one because they have to eat every single day. And now you've got a bigger fish that eats tons of those other fish, and so you see accumulations. They start to accumulate. There is no way, you see, a strawberry only has one level of accumulation. As bad as they are, I understand about the hormone issues, I know, but when I compare it to meat and dairy and eggs, there's no comparison. We're talking strawberries have this much and our meat and dairy has this, and our fish and our eggs. You see why I will never tell someone never to eat non-organic strawberries? And when you look at documentaries like Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and many of the other wonderful documentaries on a whole food plant-based diet and reversing disease, none of them use organic. They use conventional produce. So even on that guy on Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, I mean, look at the thing that happened to him. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. It's amazing what happened to him. Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. There's part 1 and part 2. Go to part 1. It's amazing. And it shows this fat, sick, and nearly dead man on several drugs, and he's got all sorts of health problems, and he goes on like 30 days of juicing. And so he is a non-organic, and he reverses his diseases. He gets off of his medications. I mean, it's amazing. So let's keep God's principles in mind first. Instead of listening to the world about why we should not be having fruit, how about looking at the other side and saying, well, wait a minute. God says that fruit is supposed to be our diet, so that must mean I'm being lied to. Don't eat strawberries. Yes, it's true. If there are people out there who are trying to reverse disease or symptoms, then, and I tell them that they have to go organic and they're very poor, what kind of hope does that give them? It doesn't give them much hope. I don't even worry about organic in the beginning stages. I just want to get people off their toxins. So I do a hierarchy. I work with the unclean first. I work with the MSG and the nevers of God's health reform, the baking powder, baking soda, the vinegar, the spices. I work on those things first with my clients. And then I start to now, once they've got that, now I start to go to the next level. All right, let's start working on animal products. And I don't even worry about their eggs at this point. I might just work on their dairy, because dairy is so incredibly filthy these days. And it's just like, how does anyone even drink this stuff anymore? And so I might have them give off dairy, because so many times dairy is actually worse than meat. When you look at the research out there, it's just kind of mind-boggling. And so when we are looking at a hierarchy, I don't worry about organic until they're already on a whole food, plant-based, gluten-free, unrefined diet. Then I will go to organic if needed. And then I'll only go to the Dirty Dozen and GMO. I won't even do all of it. So I'll just say, okay, anything that's GMO, you got to get rid of. Go to organic. And then if they still have the budget for it, then look at the Dirty Dozen and let's get rid of those things that are non-organic. You see, there's a hierarchy. We never look at fruit as giving up fruit first, just because that's the way the world tells us. You see how we can look at it in a whole different way? So fad diets always say to cut down or eliminate fruit. God's healthcare system is a high fruit diet. Satan's sick care system is a high animal food product diet. And get rid of the fruit. Yes.
So, going back to what you just said before this sentence, it sounds like you don't take everybody through to the end where no conventional, all organic, because it depends on their situation.
It depends on their situation.
Yeah.
That's right. Because by that time, I mean, because many people, they're working on something specific, and when that's gone, they're just so happy.
Okay, then you don't really have to worry about the other stuff that they're not.
I just work on what their concerns are, and I educate them.
I see.
So I don't take everybody to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay.
Yeah, no. No, I don't, I mean, a lot of people don't even want to go there, but yet I also share the health message with them. And so we have a lady who I've been working with for a few months, and she's spiritual, but she's not a Christian. And so every time she comes, I always say, would you mind if I pray with you? No, I don't mind. Well, after, every single time she's come and I pray with her, and then, oh, here, I have a book. Would you like to have this book called Ministry of Healing? You'll get some good insight. And the next time she comes, oh, would you like to know where I get these principles from? Would you like to learn them yourself? Well, yeah, here's Counsels on Diet and Foods. Would you like to know the author of those books? Here's Steps to Christ.
So there's an order. Yeah, there's an order.
There's an order.
The way that you conduct your treatment.
Yeah. Yeah, last summer we had 2 people be baptized who came to my program. Last year we also had a man who said he was a health reformer, but he came extremely fatigued. And so I already knew, of course, I'm not going to go against what he says, but I already know, no, you're not. There's something in your diet, because we have a tendency to think, I'm vegetarian, therefore I'm a health reformer. You see, we look at it as a destination rather than a journey. Our journey for health reform never ends. And so today, after he left our place, after just 1 week of eating my meals, he was just so amazed. And there he is. I'm on the call with another client in my office, and I'm looking outside, and he's now running up the hill. And my husband is on the Bobcat running behind him. And I jumped out of my seat, and I was like, this man couldn't even run 5 feet before, let alone, he couldn't even walk 5 feet hardly. There was no way he could even walk up any of our hills. And here he is running up it now. So he went home, and he asked me about how to become a health coach. He applied to be a health coach, and now he moved to Alberta, and he's doing health coaching for the Indigenous people. That's the kind of thing that happens, when we are teaching full truth to people. Because now all of a sudden they're interested. They're like, wow, last time, in fact, I'll show it to you here. I'll get to it. All right, so I want you to notice, thank you. I want you to notice that I have no research here. But I also want you to know that each one of these, I used to have research articles behind it. We have become people of the research. So I've taken all research out. but all of these conditions are reduced or eliminated by a high fruit diet. And it's all in the research. But I've taken the research out because what I want to do is I want to bring confidence back to God's word, not in the research, not because that's what the research says. So I'm a researcher. I know what the research says. But I just can't in good conscience. We need to become people of the word again, not people of the research. So I just took it all out. We need to refocus. But diabetes, heart disease, obesity, cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, stroke, it promotes bone health, detoxification, eye conditions, helps autoimmune diseases, arthritis, asthma, inflammatory diseases, mental health issues, mood imbalances, brain deterioration, bowel disease, headache, migraines, and the list just goes on. I don't know if there's anything it doesn't help. I put all of my people on a very high fruit diet. Let me explain what's happening here. All right. So this is a cell, a very rudimentary cell. And every cell has an insulin receptor site. And the pancreas produces insulin, and it has the key to unlock the door. And then because the pancreas is able to taste, has little taste testers, and it tastes the blood multiple times a second. And so now when the pancreas says, uh-oh, we have insulin, we have glucose coming into the blood, and the pancreas responds to the amount and how fast the sugar is in the body. If we get a sudden surge because we're eating brown sugar, white sugar, powdered sugar, flour products, and all of that, we're going to have a huge surge. And now our pancreas is like put on alert. Oh, man, get out of the lawn chair kind of thing, and put the hard hat on, and we got some business to do here. And then, but if it's little, like if we eat an apple, that slowly rises. Now it's very kind on the pancreas. And they don't have to like rush and say, this is an emergency. And like it would with these other products, with processed foods, with pasta, with bread, with flour, with the sugar, with all of those processed foods and the processed carbohydrates. That's what happens to the pancreas. It just beats it. Bam, bam, bam. It's just beating it. Produce more insulin. And so that the pancreas eventually gets tired. And that's when we start to have blood sugar problems and diabetes. And so we now have...
So basically, it's the pancreas that it gets shot.
It gets shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's only shot because of the diet. As soon as we switch back to God's diet, it reverses. It now can say, oh, I can finally rest.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So then the insulin then opens up the door, and the glucose goes in, and the blood sugar goes down, and now the door closes. That's the way it's supposed to happen. It goes in, the insulin goes into the muscle cells, says, knock, knock, muscle cells, I need a place to put all this glucose. And the muscle cells say, sure, come on in. But then eventually it gets full. It eventually gets full. Not every muscle cell can take unlimited amount of glucose. And so now the insulin goes over to the liver and says, knock, knock, liver, I need a place to store more glucose because the muscle cells are all full. And the liver says, sure, my job is to store glucose, so bring it all in. So the insulin goes over, says thank you very much, it unlocks the door, and the blood sugar is supposed to come down. But when it remains high, now the insulin says knock, knock to the muscles and the liver, and they say, we've got enough. No more can come in. And so now the insulin goes to the fat cells. You see the fat cells are all kind of squishy and flat, and that's the way they're supposed to be, and we see a normal shape insulin receptor site. But as we start to become malnourished, because now our cells are being filled with glucose and no nutrients, because there's no fruit, now we start to grow and our fat cells start to grow. And now, because if you have a flat balloon and you put a smiley face on it and now you blow it up, now it's distorted. Well, that's the same thing that happens with the insulin receptor site on our fat cells. And our fat cells do not want to take glucose. That's not what it wants to do. But instead, now we start to gain weight, and now we create insulin resistance. And the insulin now cannot unlock the door because it's a different shape. There's nothing wrong with the insulin. The problem is the insulin receptor site because of too much fat and too much sugar or glucose. And this gets clogged not so much because of sugar, but because of fat. Diabetes is a fat issue, not a sugar issue. The fat gets in here in these insulin receptor sites, and so the insulin is like your key that goes into your house. Your doorknob is like the insulin receptor site, and then your house is like the cell. When I want to go into my house, I use my key, unlock the door opens, all the humans go in that are going to go in, the door gets closed. That's what happens. But when I am trying to, if it rains and then it freezes, now my lock might be frozen. That's insulin resistance. Again, the problem is not so much with the insulin, but the insulin receptor site. See, the key is still the same. My house key is still my house key. So why do we inject insulin into people when that's not the problem? You see, we need to get the fat out of these insulin receptor sites. And how do we get the fat out? We change our diet. And it has to be high fiber and high fruit. Because fruit is now what cleanses all of that stuff out of the insulin receptor site. Now, when I'm getting rid of the fat and the dairy and the eggs and all the processed foods, now I'm going to lose weight naturally without having to reduce my calories because I get fuller faster by eating high fiber. Now the insulin receptor site goes back down to a normal shape again, and then my liver doesn't have to store so much, and now that I'm exercising, more of the glucose is being removed from the muscles, and now my key fits back into my door again. It's diet that is the problem with diabetes. This is the process for almost every disease that people say, don't eat fruit. And that goes for candida, it goes for fungal diseases, it goes for cancer, diabetes, all of those things. It's the same process. It doesn't change. The problem is the fat with all of these conditions. Yes?
You said fruit and fiber. What is the fiber that you're talking about?
Fiber is naturally found only in plant foods.
And plants, okay.
So it's when you eat an apple, it's filled with fiber.
Well, anything in the plant family is fiber.
As long as it's unrefined.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want fake fiber, because if you go to McDonald's, you're going to probably see 2 grams of fiber in a bun. Well, a bun that can last, 20 years without getting moldy is questionable, what's actually in it.
It's plants, fruit and plants.
Yes, it's fruits and vegetables and grains and beans, those things. Nuts and seeds, yes, part of that as well, but they don't have as much fiber in them, a lot less. But because to answer her question, I'm specifically focusing on fiber. I'm not, but even when it comes to these conditions, even if we're on a whole food plant-based diet, we can still not be on a high fat diet, even if it's too much nuts. So we can have too many nuts. I did an experiment, my poor husband. I did an experiment on both of us on our blood sugars a few years back. And so what I did was I figured out, okay, at what point, because we're whole food, plant-based, unrefined, and okay, this is how much fruit we have. For a whole week, I looked at the amount of fruit we took in, and then how many nuts can I take before I start getting insulin resistance, or he starts, and our blood sugars start to go up. Whole food, plant-based, unrefined diet. And I don't believe at that time we were gluten-free, but, or maybe I was. I don't remember. But, so we were eating the same things. But I wanted to know, because the research out there says that yes, there is a difference between fat. The fat of an avocado, nuts and seeds, olives is very different than the fat of eggs, meat, dairy, fish, and all that, and oil. And so because I don't eat oil, or we don't eat oil, I had to use nuts. And there is a max. So I found out, because I have a glucose monitor, I checked our blood sugar after every meal, and I kept track of it every day for a week. And what I found out is I can eat about 1/4 cup of nuts before my blood sugar actually starts to rise.
Per meal or day?
It was per day, but that was in one meal with fruit. But that's all that we would eat for that day. But he could take 1/3 cup before it actually started to rise his glucose. So it is an all total fat diet matters as well when we are trying to reduce these conditions that I've just mentioned, that people have a tendency to blame on sugar when it's actually the animal products. But see, that's Satan's war on fruit. The animal product kingdom doesn't want us to know that. It's marketing. Our food guide pyramid is very political. It is not science-based.
That is horrible. That is horrible. Yeah. When you put it that way, it's just plain deception and just lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just kind of pacifies. We have a food industry that doesn't care about our health, and we have a healthcare industry that doesn't care about our food. All right, so now let's look at inspiration. And I point out these words that are bold on purpose. We may use freely, notice that word freely. I happen to believe that this is the inspired word of God. And in different ways, and run no risk of incurring the diseases that are incurred by using the flesh of diseased animals. We should bring our appetite under control so that we shall enjoy plain, wholesome food and have an abundance of it, that none may suffer hunger. So no one is advocating for a hunger diet here. But notice that we can eat as much fruit as we want, and we run absolutely no risk of the diseases that are caused by the diseased animals. This is very interesting. This is Ellen White talking to a husband. She, your wife, lacks vitality and needs a generous, strengthening diet. How does God define a good, strengthening diet? She should have a good supply of fruit. It doesn't say vegetables or meat or rice or, no, it says fruit, and not be confined to the same things from day to day. She has a slender hold of life. She's on her deathbed, and God says she needs a strengthening diet, and that diet is fruit. She is diseased, and the wants of her system are far different from those of a healthy person. A good supply of fruit. And when we have cancer, what's usually the last thing that we're told to eat? Fruit. Don't eat any fruit. And yet I work with people who have cancer and have reversed it on a high fruit diet. I just don't buy it. I don't care what people say. You know, God says it. When I read this, I'm like, okay, I scratch my head. I need to change my opinion. I need to change the way I practice. I need to change the way I think. For a dyspeptic stomach, which is indigestion, you may place upon your table fruits of different kinds, but not too many at one meal. How many of us think about fruit when we have indigestion? We think of milk. We think of milk. We think of white rice. We certainly don't think of really too many things. We think of bread.
Brat diet.
The brat diet. Yes, exactly. Further on, the more we depend upon the fresh fruit, just as it is plucked from the tree, the greater will be the blessing. That's how some people in some parts of the world can get away with an all-fruit diet. A plain, simple, but liberal supply. Notice that word liberal, because I'm going to show you what a food guide pyramid looks like according to the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy when I'm done here. So I'm pointing out these on purpose. All of these are in Counsels on Diet and Foods. So a liberal supply of fruit is the best food, that can be placed before those who are preparing for the work of God.
Amen.
That's like flashing red light. Those who are preparing for the work of God, to me, that's like, hello, 144,000. This is second coming language. Get ready. High fruit. A fruit diet for a few days, so we're talking about fasting, only fruit for the days, has often brought great relief to brain workers. So we're talking about a fruit fast. Wherever fruit can be grown in abundance, a liberal supply should be prepared for winter. A liberal supply. Liberal. Apples are superior to any fruit for a standby that grows. Imagine that, the humble apple. It's like almost all around the world, and that's the best fruit. All should be acquainted with the special value of fruits and vegetables fresh from the orchard and garden. Notice that she uses special value only attributed to vegetables when it's in conjunction with fruit. She never says special value to vegetables without the word fruit. If you do a word search in Counsels on Diet and Foods and look up fruit, you're going to start seeing the pattern. Then you start doing a word search on vegetables, you're going to see the pattern. You start doing a word search on grains and beans and nuts, and you start seeing the pattern. And that's what I'm going to show you here. So this is only attributed to vegetables only when it's in combination with fruit. Do not eat largely of salt. Avoid the use of pickles and spiced foods. Eat an abundance of fruit, and the irritation that calls for so much drink at mealtime will largely disappear.
What's that irritation that she's talking about? Is that like a dyspepsia?
Yeah, it would be an upset stomach. It would be, some people have to take a drink with every single bite. If they have more fruit, I've been able to help many people to stop drinking with their meals just by increasing their fruit content. It would do well for us to, now here's our meal prep. God, now keep in mind that this Nebuchadnezzar diet is an end time prophetic diet, okay? So here we are. It would be well for us to do less cooking and to eat more fruit in its natural state. You see, we're heading on into heaven. So even if we are on a whole food, plant-based, unrefined Daniel cooked diet, he's trying to take us and eventually move us at some point in the history to a raw Nebuchadnezzar diet. Because that's where we're heading to in heaven. So eat more fruit, less cooking, and let us teach the people to eat freely of the fresh grapes, apples, peaches, pears, berries, and all other kinds of fruit that can be obtained. Let these be prepared for winter by using canning, using glass as far as possible instead of tin. When we are doing less cooking, we're talking raw fruits and vegetables, because that's where the key is. Once we cook them, now keep in mind that when she wrote, this is like 150 years ago, that is the baseline of where we are to start. 150 years later, we are to be way advanced of the beginning of where we were starting. The Counsels on Diet and Foods is where we start, and we move forward from there. Let them impart this knowledge as they would Bible instruction. It's a moral issue. The way we eat is moral. Let them teach the people to preserve the health and increase the strength by avoiding the large amount of cooking that is filling the world, that has filled the world with chronic invalids. So even if we are on a whole food, plant-based, unrefined diet, we need to start moving towards more raw fruits and vegetables. It's just moving towards. You know, we just keep the end in mind. Let those who advocate health reform strive earnestly to make it all they claim it is. Let them discard everything, or does that say most everything? That means 100%. That doesn't mean, well, once a year, you know, I've got to have some vice, right? So, no, it means on my birthday or any other day of the year, it doesn't give me license to go outside of God's health reform. Everything. It's death before dishonor. 144,000. We stand firm like Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar and Jesus. Let them, and then use simple, wholesome food. Fruit is excellent and saves much cooking. When we look at and compile all this stuff, it's not fruit that causes disease like obesity, diabetes, cancer, candida, fatty liver, and other symptoms. It's the saturated fat and all fat diet. So we have to reduce our nuts as well, because if you do a word search in Counsels on Diet and Foods, you're going to see that nuts too need to be cut down. Satan was the most subtle of all beasts of the field. Most of us have bought his lie of don't eat fruit. Now we're given inspiration on budgeting as well. So provide an abundance of good, wholesome food. Do not practice economy in this direction. Things are expensive everywhere. Since COVID, you know, in Canada, our food has like tripled. I mean, and the food in the U.S. used to be much cheaper than Canada, and it made it worth our time to go to Bellingham and take it back into Canada. No more. Bellingham is now more expensive than Canada. And we have really increased our food prices. It's not just here. It's everywhere. But we are not to practice economy in this direction. Restrict your meat bills, but have plenty of good fruit and vegetables. But she doesn't say have plenty of good vegetables. Remember, it's only in combination that she uses these words with vegetables, only when it's in combination of fruit. And then you will enjoy seeing the hearty appetite with which all will partake of your preparations. Never feel that good hygienic food that is eaten is lost. It will make blood and muscle and give good strength for daily duties. Amen. Fruit, if it can be obtained, is the best article of food. Let the same amount of money be expended for meat be used to purchase fruit. It doesn't say vegetables. As wonderful as vegetables is, I'm trying to make a point here. Because we all know fruits and vegetables are healthy. But I'm trying to make a point that she's not mentioning vegetables, she's saying fruit. Every penny expended for tea, coffee, and flesh meat is worse than wasted. For these things hinder the best development of the physical, mental, and spiritual powers. So we are to watch our budget when it comes to other things. Our vacations, our subscriptions, what do we buy at the checkout counter of the grocery store, our King's Dainties, our Flesh Pots of Egypt. Are we buying cable television? Are we going to the movies? Are we wasting our money on all of this other stuff? God says our diet first. Food first. Then if there's anything left, then go to other things. But I can't say that I would say that if there's money left over, that I should be buying cable TV. I want to make that clear. Okay. Let fruit be placed on the table in abundance. I am glad that you were able to provide for the sanitarium table. This is Ellen White talking. Fresh fruit from your own orchard. This is indeed a great advantage. Make fruit the article of diet to be placed upon your table, which shall constitute the bill of fare. The juices of fruit mixed with bread will be highly enjoyed. Good, ripe, undecayed fruit is a thing we should thank the Lord for because it is beneficial to health. And yet we've bought the lie of Satan, don't eat fruit. We think that there's no value in it. The table of your helper should be furnished not with meat, but with an abundant supply of good fruit, grains, and vegetables. Again, she does not use abundant supply with grains and vegetables unless it's mixed with fruit, prepared in a nice, wholesome way. So the Lord intends to bring his people back. So that means that there was one way, we've walked away from it, and now he's trying to bring us back to something. To live upon simple, fresh fruits, vegetables, and grains, God provided fruit in its natural state for our first parents. In order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan for man's diet. He who created man and who understands his needs appointed Adam his food. Behold, he said, I have given you every herb yielding seed, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for food. Listen to this one. By precept and example, make it plain that the food which God gave Adam in his sinless state, pre-sin, is the best for man's use as he seeks to regain that sinless state. Amen. You see, it's always moving towards to Eden. He's trying to get us there. Doesn't mean we have to get there today or tomorrow. It's a process. And each one of us are led by a fingerprint. So God will guide your family and you maybe a little bit differently than he'll guide me and my family. So we can't judge somebody else where they are because God's moving us in a certain way. We cannot be that judge for somebody else. And this again screams to me 144,000 end time events, and this is heading towards the Garden of Eden again, towards the end time. In grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts are to be found all the food elements that we need. I'm just going to go over, so let no one think he can do as he pleases in the matter of diet. No one. You cannot afford to do otherwise. Let us comprehend these responsibilities and bear them nobly in the name of the Lord. And where do we do the greatest medical missionary work? At the table. So we share what medical missionary work is about at the table because of how I eat. What is on my plate? What's on your plate? We don't judge one another's plates. Because I'm a teacher, you have a right to look at my plate, but I have no right to look at your plate. You know, I don't even look at people's plates. I don't, because I don't want people thinking I'm judging them. It's just not my business. I don't really care what people eat. So by teaching, as we near the close of time, we must rise higher and still higher upon the question of health reform and Christian temperance, presenting it in a more positive and decided manner. You see positive? You see that word positive? And we are so much into judging. That's not positive. Finger pointing, talking about our pastor, our conference leaders. You know what? It's not your business. They are humans too. Yes, I understand what the council says about how they should eat. Let them be. Raise them up in prayer and allow them their relationship with God. Because gossiping and finger pointing about them isn't going to bring them any closer. It's gonna cause rebellion. because they want freedom just like you want freedom. We must strive continually to educate the people, not only by our words, but by our practice. Precepts and practice combined have a telling influence. All right, here we go. This is the food guide pyramid according to the spirit of prophecy. So these are all the words that I read to you. They come right out of Counsels on Diet and Foods. So therefore, I read all these words: abundantly, freely, liberally, best, superior, blessing, more, fruit, fast, depend upon, largely. That tells me that the bulk of our diet should be fruit. Vegetables. She only uses these words: largely with fruit, encourage with fruit, must be properly prepared. She doesn't say that with fruit because fruit's already prepared. Well prepared. Some cannot use them. So if some cannot use them, how can we be healthy?
With the fruit.
With the fruit. Exactly. So that means that these can be optional. But when we look at the research now, this is where I go to the research, and I also believe that there were greens eaten in the Garden of Eden with the fruit. So when we see the people that are healed from the greens, because greens are only one molecule away from our blood. It is very close to our blood, so that's why this is in a whole box. It's in the middle. You see, it gets cut off over here, gets cut off here, and it gets cut off here. And so here we have our water-based vegetables, and we have our starch-based vegetables. So the far majority of our diet should be fruit and greens with some vegetables and then some beans. And it says, how does she describe grains and beans? With fruits and vegetables is the diet chosen for us by our Creator. Some cannot use them. So again, and she was one of the people who could not use beans. They must be prepared simply and without grease. Nuts, do not use too much, used unwisely. Some are less wholesome and that others do not use freely. They are too rich, and we need to use 1/10 to 1/6 of what the recipe calls for. So you see how I came up with the food guide pyramid? All right, I'm going to go through these last slides quickly for you. This is a woman who came to my lifestyle program in November, and she had severe gout to where she could not even walk. Me and two men had to carry her into my house. And as we're carrying her, I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I did not realize that she was that bad. No one told me she was like that bad. And so she had gout so bad and so much pain. The way that she even got to me was her husband, who was elderly, he gave her an ultimatum. Honey, I love you to pieces, but I can't take care of you anymore. She was total bed rest, 100% bed rest. He said, I can't take care of you. I don't have the energy, and I'm wearing down myself. You have two options. You can either go to a nursing home or you can go to Dr. Janie's. And now this is him telling me, and she said, I'm not going to Dr. Janie's. and so he said, okay, then I'm going to take you to the nursing home. And she said, fine, I'll go to Dr. Janie's. So that's how she came to me, kind of with that attitude too. She did not want to be there at first. So I talked to her, gave her all the health reform stuff and, Bible studies and everything we do. And so on day 7, I happened to be talking to her like I did every day. But this time I asked her, how are you feeling? How's your pain? She's sitting in her wheelchair, and I said, how's your pain? And she just kind of looks up at the sky, up the ceiling, and she says, I don't know. And I said, well, do you have pain? I don't know. I said, well, where was your pain before? I don't know. And that literally was what she said to me. And I said, well, do you have pain right now? And she says, no. And I said, what are you doing in your wheelchair? I said, get up and walk. and she got up. And this is her. She is not walking unassisted. She's walking with with assistance here, but that's her walking on day 7. Amazing.
Yes, amazing.
And here she is. She followed my program. She's now living with her daughter-in-law, who totally supported my program. Oh, why isn't that working? Oh, it's working back there, but it's not working here. Well, you can turn back. But so I don't know what happened now. So what happened is she went home, and for the next 6 weeks. So that's not. You need to change that as well. So that was her then. She went home, followed the program to a T, and now this is her walking. 6 weeks later, unassisted. It's still not showing up there, but it's showing up back there. So here she is at her own home now, 6 weeks later, walking completely unassisted. Amen. That's health reform. That's God's blessings. That's a miracle. 6 weeks later. Okay, you can, okay, there's something different back there and here. Okay, so this is a woman who was also at that November program. Look at her pasty look here. And you can see the inflammation around her neck. You can see it around her face. Look at the wrinkles in her forehead. Look at the quality of her eyebrows. Look at her nose and her eyes. Look how gaunt her eyes look. She looked like death coming to me. And look at her here. Look at those bright eyes.
She looks so much younger.
Yes. Yeah. That was 10 days later.
Wow.
10 days. And you can see that the stress is gone. Look at all those wrinkles that are now gone. Look at the quality of her eyebrows, the quality of her eyes. She's got spark and life back in her life again. You can see that much of that inflammation is gone. Amazing. This is another woman who came to me, completely out of control of diabetes. You can see glucose 16.9, 18.7, 19, 19.1. It didn't change. It's 19.1, and then you can see in the urinalysis, if you can change that for me, or maybe I can. Okay, then you can see in her urinalysis that her glucose is very high, her ketones are very high, and she's just a mess. She comes to me with basically an 18 to 19 blood sugar. She's got a continuous glucose monitor on. She's been in my house for 7 days, and I said, show me your blood sugars on average. So notice this is November 20th. And I said, show me your blood sugars, what's been happening on average over the last 30 days. 3 weeks away from my place before she comes, plus 1 week. Look at that. You just saw she went from the 18s to 11. You see 40% are in range. She's got 24% very high, 36% high, and then she's got 1% very low. Standard deviation of 3.1. Then I said, it's still November 20th, I said, let me see what's happening to your blood sugars in the last 14 days, 7 days at my house. Went down to 10.5, standard deviation 2.9, 58% in range. It's 31% high, 11% very high, and no lows or very lows. And then I said, well, what's been happening the last 7 days at my house? Still November 20th. Look at that, 8.6. 1.9 standard deviation, 91% in range. Now, Look at this. I said, what's been happening in the last 2 days? 8.6 standard deviation, 8.6 with a 1.2 standard deviation, 98% in range. The next day, on the November 20th, I said, what's been happening yesterday and today? 7.7, 100% in range. She went from using 150 units of glucose, of insulin, down to less than 10 by the time she left. This is on top of, I asked her on day 1 during the intake, what foods are you afraid of? Fruit and potatoes. And in that conversation, what are we going to, like, what kind of food are we going to eat? Fruit and potatoes. And her eyes got really wide, and she said, I can't eat those things. I said, trust the process. You've been trying this for 20 years. It's not working. Let's try something totally radical and totally different. I said, trust the process. So for the first couple of days, she's just like, going crazy because her blood sugars are going crazy. That's what they do, because all the fiber in all that food that I'm giving her now is finally washing out the insulin receptor sites. And so all her glucose is all over the place. That's what you expect. On day 3, things start to change. On day 4, they get better, and that's why I didn't even ask to really see her glucose until day 7. But on day 3, she's like, wow, my glucose is getting better. Day 4 and 5 and 6. And finally on day 7, I said, okay, I need to look at your glucose monitor. But that is a high fruit diet right there. High fruit, potatoes. I even had a baked potato bar in her honor. Because what I want to do, I want to address people's fears right then and there. I want them to have those foods in my house so they can see that they don't need to be afraid of those foods. If she would have said corn and potatoes, I would have given her corn and potatoes. But everybody says fruit. Yeah.
What do you mean when it says 100% in range? What does that mean? 100% like every day her glucose?
24 hours in that day, it's 100% in range. She never had a high, never had a low. There was no recording in her continuous glucose monitor that went too high or too low. It's totally in normal range. Yeah, amazing. So many times we think that apples and Twinkies are the same thing. That's what we've been taught. That's Satan's lie. That's Satan's war on fruit. This just happened to be somebody in front of me in the grocery store. I kind of had to quietly take that picture. But no fruits or vegetables. Everything processed. No wonder that we are in such... Yeah. And look at this. And this is really sad because us Adventists are in this same category. Lifestyle changes. People, when I go travel around, they usually come to me afterwards and they say, okay, you talked about all this diet stuff, but what remedy can I do for lowering my blood pressure? I just gave like hours of talks. Sometimes people don't get it. We've got this way of thinking, but these are remedies. This is a remedy. See, that's the remedy. I don't have to go to all this expensive vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and all the probiotics and prebiotics and all of this stuff that people have to buy. I go to diet first. Then I'll go to these other things if that isn't working. But that's us too. That's us. This is the natural law of health. We are what we eat. This is when my husband and I were here, I think, last year. But this is our counter when we go to the market here in Hawaii, and this is what our counter looks like at home too. These I took the picture only after I had already put everything else in the fridge. So that's only what was on the counter. This, however, is on our counter at home. So this is for 1 week's food bill. Now we won't eat all that in 1 week. Some of this will spill over into week 2, but by week 2, I'm already buying other things because some of these things are out.
Is there any fruits that we shouldn't mix? Like, I've heard it say melon should be eaten alone.
You know, I have looked that up even in the research. And with the food combining like that, I don't find it in research, and I don't find it in Councils on Diet and Foods. In fact, I see that it's contradictory to Councils on Diet and Foods, because we're told 2 meals a day and no snacking. And if we are going to be, nowhere does she say eat some fruit before your meal and wait 20 minutes and then eat the rest. I don't see that anywhere. I most of the time with the food combining thing, you know, with different fruits, I don't find that in the research. And so, but for some people, our counsel is, if it bothers you, you don't have to blast it to the world. You just simply make the change, and you just do what works for you.
Okay, one more question. What about juicing vegetables?
Yeah, juicing vegetables is wonderful.
It is, okay. And you can eat that with your meal? Can you drink that with
No, it would be more considered a juice or drinking with your meal. So you would definitely want, that would be like your meal replacement.
I see. And not to eat anything with it. Like
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
How about making smoothies?
All right.
Making what?
Smoothies. Here's smoothie bowls right here. So these are smoothie bowls. These are all with different toppings on them, with mango, oranges, hemp hearts, nuts, pineapple. There's coconut. Now this bread, I don't use any yeast, and I haven't for many, many years, but this is a flat bread that I make. It's 100% flax. Just flax, water, and salt, and that's all. And I make it on a griddle. And they freeze wonderful. And then there's guacamole on top. And these are black bean bread with hummus. So this just kind of gives you an idea of how we eat and how I see health reform. And if someone else sees it different, I have no problem with that. But you'll notice, look at these starches. So this is homemade granola. I don't really eat granola that much. Waffles, and then this is some millet. Notice that these starches are side dishes. They are side dishes to the fruit.
Oh, they're not the main.
They're not the main thing, but most of us make the starches our main meal, and then we'll have an apple and an orange, you know, or 1 banana, and call it good. And I've eaten my fruit for the day. And those are no small plates. You know, those are a real dinner-sized plate. So that is, you know, 1 orange, it's 1 kiwi, 1 a pear, and then, yes, we've got pomegranate. This is a few different, I think this is 2 plums with all that pomegranate. That's 1 whole pomegranate, and that would be 1 whole pomegranate.
That would be per person, huh?
Per person, yeah. So 1 whole papaya, greens, other fruit. There's some fat and some nuts here. And this is actually another meal that we had in Hawaii. So when we travel, we don't change our diet.
So papaya with the seeds, eating the seeds as well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't always eat the seeds. Sometimes they're very delightful, and sometimes they're super, super punch me with pepper.
Yeah.
And that's just too much for me. So, but I usually will eat some of the seeds, if not all of them. Now, I don't eat generally stuff like this, but, you know, I don't see anything wrong with it. But here we have lychee, we have dragon fruit, papaya, and the pomegranates again.
And the green.
Okay, here's a salad. Now this is properly mixed with fruits. Those, it would be like cucumbers and tomatoes, which are a fruit vegetable mix, and those are fine with fruit. And then chia and other fruit.
Is that kale? I'm sorry.
That is kale, yes. And I love arugula, and that is a cucumber soup. It's raw with tomatoes. And then I don't cook our fruit very often, but on occasion we might have some waffles and have some very lightly heated fruit, but generally not. All right, this is my version of a banana split. I serve this to everybody who comes to our house. We have carob sauce here. We have only dates and water. And then, of course, we have our banana, and then we have ice cream. So this is 100% banana, 100% raspberry, 100% strawberry. And then there's the carob sauce. This is 100% mango with some other nuts on it. And so when I do a fruit fast, many times that's what I will do. So I'm just not eating, several oranges. I'm actually making myself a meal. I make my fruit into a meal. I don't just, graze. So I feel like I'm actually eating. This is buckwheat bread with hummus. And I do love to do watermelon cleanses. So I would eat probably like 2 melons in one meal. And that's all I would eat.
1 or 2 melons?
2.
Oh,
2 whole melons. Yeah, for the one meal. Because you got to get enough calories. Yeah. And this is oat bread that I make. 100% oats, water, and salt. That's it. And there's some guava. And then I love to have dates and some kind of nut butter and chia, of course. And this is teff cereal with John the Baptist carob. That's locust right there. It's not an insect. So this would be an all fruit meal for me. So this is a day that I was fruit fasting. And so you see how I make it fun?
Yes. You must use a Vitamix?
I have a Vitamix.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we use too.
Yeah. And a nice big salad with olives and tomatoes, and then a tahini dressing with my fruit. Another salad. I love my salads. Love my salads. Can't get enough.
Which kind of olives would you use without vinegar? Are they the dehydrated olives or what?
I get olives that come from, I don't know why this isn't changing. Okay. This is not what's on my, okay. Yeah, this is the one I was looking for. So, what was your question?
The olives without vinegar.
Oh yeah, we get our olives from Raw Food World. They're no vinegar. They're completely, they are dehydrated. They're not cooked like some of the olives are. And they don't have any of the chemicals. They actually get put in a salt brine. They don't get put in a chemical brine.
Yeah, they're delicious.
So here we go again. My husband doesn't eat exactly like I do, and that's totally fine because he's his own person. He has a right to eat the way he wants to. And if I choose different, but he gives me the right to eat the way I want to. So we're respectful of each other. And so here's another smoothie bowl. And this is bread that I've made again, and this is made out of 100% red lentil, split red lentils. And so there's some other examples.
Wow, that looks gourmet.
So you can see I love my big salads, and those are big salad. Those are serving bowls, by the way. Those are serving bowl salads. That's not just a side salad.
So you get a lot of bulk.
Yes, yeah. And I also at times I will blend them as well, So I might have a blended green salad where I put in my Vitamix, I put, the Costco size containers. I'll put half of that in. I'll put some lemon, a little bit of water, like a quarter of a cup. I blend all that down, and it comes out to about that much. I put the rest of the Costco container in, the whole thing now. I put in a tomato, and I might put in some seasonings like some fresh herbs or dried herbs, and I blend all that down, and now I drink it. And how easy is to now get 12 ounces of greens. That's how easy it is. And when you get that many greens, I'll tell you, you're just going to be like amazed with how much energy you're going to have. It's amazing. There was one morning when I was eating that much every single day for months and months, and it's like 5 o'clock in the morning or something, and my husband asked me, "Where are you going?" Because I'm getting dressed. And I said, "I just got to get out of here. I just got to run. I've got so much energy, I feel like a caged animal." He's like, "Okay." I ran 5 miles with no training. I just kept going and going, and I took my dogs with me. And we just kept going, and they're all happy, I'm happy, and I just kept on running until I came home, and I did the next day. It's just, I'll tell you, when you get that many greens, it's amazing.
And I have a question.
Yes.
Do you eat your food in order, or do you?
I don't eat my food in order.
Okay, it's just randomly.
However I feel like it. All right, this is I cut it before I realized I should have taken a picture. So anyway, at least you have it. This is a breakfast plantain cake out of the banana plantains. So that's mainly plantains right here with some blueberries and yummy. Now, this is a meal that I made for my husband. Giant salad, you can see. And then I made some burgers. These are pickles without vinegar. I made my own ketchup. There's some avocado, tomato, lettuce, and corn on the cob. These are patties again with gravy on them. So I just show them, my husband more eats that stuff than I do. And I feed my dog like this too, by the way. So you can see I've made some white beans for her. So she always gets her raw. That's her first course. And her second course then would be the cooked food. So I'll always, because she needs enough calories, she can't eat enough raw in order to get as much. And so she's completely plant-based. And
So that's just in one meal?
that's one meal. Wow. Yeah. You should recognize this. This is where we love to shop. Hilo, yeah. And now these are happy people at my table. That was the man right there who I said ended up running at the end of the week, and he's now a health reformer. And this is the end of that week, and he is now a health coach. And you can see I've got a baked potato bar here with some beans and all sorts of good stuff. And here he is again. And this is the lady that I told you about, or I was telling you about for 4.5 years. That's her. So this woman, I just love her now. And she has lost 120 pounds in this picture. And she's been off of all of her medications. She was on like 15 different medications or something. She had every disease you could imagine. She's disease-free here. And they are over at our place for a Christmas meal. All right. What do you think about that? What kind of comments, questions do you have? Yes.
So when the children of Israel were in the wilderness and God gave them manna, He gave them manna because they didn't have fruit, right? And they didn't have vegetables, they weren't growing things. So how does something like manna fit in our diet? What is that? Is it fruit or is it a grain?
Yeah, so manna is a representative of the food that God wants His people on. So
they ground up fruit and put it on the
I think it's more like a representative. rather than the literal, because God says, eat of all of these trees, but don't eat of that one. So these trees over here are representative of all the foods that God has made by his own hand. And this one tree over here is representative of probably 90% of the grocery store of the foods that God did not make by his hand. And so I see it as more of a representative rather than a literal. So we see literally that God is trying to move his people to a high fruit diet, because that's what God's people are going to be eating as they are waiting for the coming of the Lord, who are doing the Lord's work, who want to regain Eden again, is a high fruit diet. Yeah, good question. Yes. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
I have a comment. I can understand now very clearly why Sister White says, move out of the cities and move into the country where you can grow your own provisions. And that's where we're going to get more of the
Yes.
fruits, the simple things, the vegetables, because we can't buy or sell
That's right.
after the National Sunday Law. So we're going to have to get everything from our gardens.
Yeah. And that time is coming quickly. We can see the Christian nationalists are really rising up strongly. And Trump just signed into bill to allow prayer back into schools. So, yeah, I mean, we're on the fast track. Yeah.
I see the beauty of adopting this kind of diet because it decreases the work at home, so you don't have to be cooking like, even with vegetables, it takes a little bit more effort. But just eating the fruits, and I mean, if we're going to be in the wilderness,
Yeah.
God will provide that, and we have to get used to that kind of diet before
Yeah. We get there.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing all that you're sharing, because it brings a lot of light that I didn't have before. And being a healthcare, professional, I always had the idea with the diabetics, okay, well, they can eat fruit, because that's what we were taught that. They are taught that. And so we are a team of fear mongering over fruit.
Yeah.
But so how do you try to convince a patient that it's been convinced that the fruit is bad, to start them on a
I always start with the baseline and say what you're doing is not working. So let's try something new. And by the time they come to me, they already know what I'm about. And they're just desperate. And they've already been through 25 other healthcare providers, and I'm always the last result. The last resort, because the last thing they want to do when they've exhausted everything, they've gone through every medication, every herbal, every other diet out there, that's when they come to find me, because now they've tried everything out there and they need to try something different. Or by word of mouth, and talk to Dr. Janie, she's done this for me, or everything that I've done has been word of mouth. This is the first time my website's been up, is this week, since I've been in Hawaii. And so, everything I've done has been word of mouth. And I stay busy as I want to be. Yes.
What would your suggestion be? Because, for example, in our church, we have people bringing meat to potluck. We have all kinds of sweets, where Sister White says we shouldn't even have those in our own homes. And how do we deal with that?
That's a very good question. We deal with it lovingly, kindly, with respect and honoring them. They have their choice to eat the way they want, and we have the choice to eat the way we want. So when we want a reformation, I'm the one who has to change. If you want a reformation in your church, you have to be that change agent. That means what you put on that potluck table should be superior, totally in line with health reform. What goes on your plate should be totally health reform. That's how we make, and if it's never in finger pointing, it's never in gossiping, it's never telling someone what they should or shouldn't eat in the potluck. You've got diabetes, you shouldn't be eating that, but then I go back and take it myself. It's never it's never done untactfully. So we always deal with it ourselves first, because I'm the change agent that I want to see. And if I am not consistent, what makes my clients think that they can do it if I can't even do it? You know, if I'm expecting them to eat a certain way and I can't even do it, that doesn't give them hope. But when I say, hey, I've been eating like this for 30 years, they're like, oh, okay, I guess it is doable. And I don't change, I don't compromise when I travel. You know, I don't, you know, that whole 2.5 months that I was in Kenya, they knew my diet, and there were things served that I chose not to eat, and I just quietly didn't take those things until eventually they started to notice, but I never said anything. You know, because I want to honor them. And I mean, I told them within the guidelines, but if someone chooses to go outside the guidelines, then, you know, what can I do? I want to honor them, I want to love them, I have to be tactful, and we have to rise above the feelings of superiority. Like, well, I just don't want to eat that. You know, that's like a superior attitude. That, I don't want to eat that. You know, so it's, you know, I'm good, I'm going to eat this. You know, I've got enough. Thank you so much. You know, we have to learn to be tactful. We have to learn how to reword things to not be offending everybody all over the place. And especially for you who have been through these classes now, and now your eyes are opened and you understand, you have now greater responsibility to love the rest of the church members. No matter what they bring, you must rise above it and love them into the health message. You pay attention to what you bring, you pay attention to what's on your plate, and let your plate speak for itself. If we do the greatest medical missionary work at the table, that doesn't mean that I get to pinpoint of what's wrong in everybody's plate. That's judgmental, and it's wrong, and it's not pleasant. So I'm very big on just, we cannot be judging people. I don't care what they're eating. It doesn't, my family, they eat pork, and they eat, you know, lobster, and they eat whatever. I love them. And where do they go when they want help? To me. I don't judge them. I let them eat, and they know that they've all told me that. I'm so thankful that we know that you're very strong in your diet and very strong in your beliefs, but you don't push it on us. See, just me standing in their presence, I am being a role model for them because I don't compromise in front of them.
So, along with that, if you have family or relatives that you don't eat with and you want to share dietary changes, how would you go about that? Because you're not eating with them or with, you know, they're not seeing how you eat or how I eat.
You mean like someone who might be like on the mainland or something and you guys never get together? Or
Somebody you're not eating with normally.
So when you're trying to share health reform with people, that too has to be done very tactfully. And so the way that you could do it, if they say, oh, you know, Aunt Glee, I just found out that I have high blood pressure. And what you say is you, many times you make it about you and you make it about somebody else, but never about them. You should do this. No, they're gonna dig their heels in. Instead, you say, I used to have high blood pressure too, and this is what I did. And then it's basically a sentence or two or three, and then you stop. If they are more interested, they're gonna ask more questions. But don't keep going on, you know, on and on and on, because now they're completely overwhelmed. You've gone way beyond what they wanted an answer for, and now they know they cannot trust you to ask questions again. And now they're totally turned off.
Yeah, but if they're not asking questions, you just know that, you know, what information you have could help them.
Okay,
How do you
so
present that?
in that case, what you would say is, well, hi, Aunt Glee, how are ya? You know, I heard the most interesting talks this weekend, and you use somebody else. So don't use your knowledge, use my knowledge. this lady was amazing. I learned so much. See, I do that too. I can't use myself as the knowledge base. I use somebody else at times. I mean, if a patient is coming to me, it's my knowledge. But if it's a family member, if it's someone else in the church, I often will use somebody else, like a YouTuber that I might listen to. Oh, you know what? I was listening to this YouTube, so it's not my knowledge, because sometimes they get a little with their back up. And so we just have to learn to be really tactful. And oh yeah, you know, I was listening to this YouTuber, and man, she was amazing. She talked about this and that. And you see, it's not an attack on you, on them, and it's not you being a know-it-all. I do that a lot when my knowledge is not what somebody wants to hear. I know the answer, but I have to use somebody else. So when you use somebody else, it just kind of totally removes that, like that judgment, that, you know, we have to, when we talk to people, we want to make sure that we always have their salvation in mind. We never want to turn them away. We must be kind and gentle and tactful and loving with them. We have to be if we want to turn them towards God. Yes.
So sometimes I learn about new things and I tell my husband, this is really important, maybe we should talk about doing it. He immediately gets online and tells me 100 different reasons why it's not good for us.
Yeah.
And that is so frustrating to me,
Yeah.
because I know that if we ate the way that I'm trying to learn, that he would feel better. But like, just for an example, I have been making chia seeds for us for a long time, and I would put turmeric in the chia seeds. And when I got back from Alaska this summer, he's like, please don't put turmeric in my chia seeds. It's gonna kill us. I saw this thing on the YouTube where this lady had turmeric in it, and it eventually closed up all of her bowels, and she couldn't do anything, and she almost died. And I said, but it's, you know, good
What
for
you have to do is you have to honor him,
I am.
and
That
just
is really hard for me, because then he comes back to me and he says, I see it here and here and here and here and here, and turmeric is just bad for you, so you cannot. And I said, fine. So I stopped putting it in his chia seeds. But I know in my heart that it's good for him, but he, you know, what I'm asking is, how do you change somebody's mind when everything that you say gets backed up by all the negative and bad stuff that's on the
you see your approach. I'm not bagging on you, but you're the one asking the question. But our approach many times we are the ones who are helping someone to dig their feet into the sand. They don't want to move. We have to recognize that God gives us free will. We have to give free will to somebody else as well. We don't want other people telling us what our duty is, and we should not be telling other people what their duty is. A man is when he's being constantly told what to do like that, he's going to rebel. He wants honor. He wants respect. And he doesn't want a mother telling him what to do. We as women, close your ears, honey. But if we are kind and loving and tactful to our husbands, they literally are putty in our hands. But we have to be loving and kind and tactful and gentle.
So do they. No.
Well,
the thing that hurts me so much.
No, let me interrupt.
Okay.
Because I need to finish this, because it's so important. When we are not a drippy wife, because us wives, us women, we are often drippy. We often want to treat our husbands like a mother, and we cannot do that to men. That's what feminism is about. We have to treat them like a man. And they literally will go through shark-infested waters to get us a lemonade if we treat them kindly. And they know that they are loved, and and honored by us. Men aren't looking for love, they're looking for respect. They want to hear, thank you for going to work for me, that I can stay home or I can do a ministry or whatever it is. They like to hear, thank you so much for doing that work. Thank you for working so hard. You know, because that's what God has given men to do. They want to be the warrior of the family. And so we have to lift them up. But we've gotten into this feminist thing that, well, I don't want to, lift my husband up. He doesn't do anything right. We can't treat our husbands like that and be a godly wife. We must, no matter how much he hurts us, we must continue to be that loving, kind, gentle, tactful wife. We must. If we want to turn him to Christ, if we want to turn him to diet, we have to zip it. We have to know when to stop talking and when to not say anything. And yet for us women, it's so hard for us, but it's something we must conquer. We have to conquer it. And your husband, I guarantee he will change if you change. But see, he's also looking at you and he's like, well, you compromise with all this stuff and now you want me to do this? I'm not your puppet. He's not your puppet. Honor him and his choices and let him know that you love him despite his choices, even if they're wrong, even if they are killing him. You must honor him.
Unconditional love.
It's unconditional love when it comes to husband and wife, especially us women. We are so controlling with our men. We can't do that. We are the ones who must change. It's most of the time the men will come along when we change. And they literally are putty in our hands when we treat them kindly. Because that's what God has, how he's created them to be. But I'm not talking about being fake. I'm talking about true love. Do they really know they're being honored? Do they know that you appreciate them? And they'll go to the ends of the world for you. They'll change their diet for you. They will do anything for you. But it's our attitude that will make or break him. But it's also him who will make or break a woman too. It is a two-way street. But the Bible says that a wife will save her husband and a husband can save his wife. So how do we do that? We do that by upholding the principles and not wavering. And we stand firm in our convictions. And when we go wrong, and we do, I'm not perfect, but he recognizes that I admit when I do wrong because I feel terrible before the Lord. It's not even so much before him. I feel terrible that I did this. I sinned before my God, And when our husbands start to see that we actually have true repentance, they're going to come along. That's how we save people, is by my attitude, by how I choose to live. It's my example of my loving kindness is going to bring somebody to the Lord. So when someone's not coming and we see they're resisting, we don't finger point at them. We bring it right back to me. What am I not doing right? So this is to all the women. I say this is the same, I get this kind of question all the time. And I'm always grateful when people ask, because some people, we have a tendency, him this, she does that, and finger pointing at everybody else instead of finger pointing back at ourselves. So let us lift our husbands up in prayer, in private prayer. Any other comments or questions? Was that an amen from the men back there?
How much longer are you and your husband here in the island?
We leave Monday. Yeah, we will have been here 11 days.
But come back and speak again, because we need a repeat. We need to be reminded.
I have lots of other topics.
Yeah, and even just like a practical cooking class, that would have been wonderful while you were here.
Yeah, you know, I'm just not too much into cooking classes anymore, even though I've done hundreds and hundreds of them. My goal is to help God's people to understand why God gave us a health message. Why is it important? What's it have to do with the 144,000? Because a cooking class can be done by anybody. We can look online, but where do you hear what I'm teaching? We don't hear it. Why would I be spending my time, doubling my time on cooking classes or health talks when somebody else can do it? Because now when you guys understand why God gave us a health message, why it's important, now you start to study, now I can multiply my efforts through you as you start to share with other people. And now I've got people all over the world sharing this message. Because health reform is the red carpet of our salvation. And now when we understand, wow, it's like a salvational issue, I think that, and you alone can have a huge, I mean, there's more than one of you. One of you alone can have a huge effect on your church. When we were at a prior church, we had probably less than 30 people attending, and so not a big church. And I would just quietly bring my own food, to church every week, because I never knew, I never know what I can eat or not eat at a potluck. And so I just quietly and, respectfully just bring my own food, and that's what I like to do anyway. I like to eat the way that I eat. Yeah. And and I'm given that right, like you're given your right to eat how you want. And so I was just quietly bringing my food every single week, and finally, about a month later, someone says, "Hey, I noticed that you never eat at our potluck. Is there something that I can make for you that you can actually eat, or that you would choose to eat?" And I say, "Yeah, this and this," and the next week they brought that, and I made sure I took it, and I had one thing. And then I noticed someone else would say, "Hey, I noticed, and well, yeah, you could bring this." And within probably six months or 9 months, total health reform table, and I never told anybody how to eat. It was just simply living out my life quietly, respectfully, tactfully, not telling people, don't bring that to potluck. I just simply waited for them to come to me. And so now that there's multiple of you, you can have a huge, huge effect on the health and the health reform of this church. You can. You pay attention to what you bring to the potluck. You pay attention to what you put on your plate and make sure it's full health reform.
Would you also bring some of your food to share that you like to eat at potluck?
Yeah, I do many times. Yeah, but many times that's the only thing I can eat. So it does become a little more difficult. But some churches I know, like that church, I like to eat a lot of salads and fruit. And in most potlucks, even if they're whole food plant-based, everything's cooked. Yes. And I just don't like to eat all that cooked stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. It is health reform, but it's the balance of it. So give me a large plate of fruit and some greens, and then what matches with that fruit is going to be like some beans or rice. That all matches. And so now I've got a little bit of cooked food, but mostly raw. I just don't like when everything is cooked. Yeah. So we have to be careful not to take like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of this, and before you know it, you've got a war going on in your stomach every Sabbath because everything's combined. You take one thing and you take more of it, and then, so like in our other church, what we did, eventually, the church that I was just talking about that did total health reform and gluten-free, and yet I never told anybody to do that. And so what we did was we had 3 or 4, I think four different, we put all the families into one of four columns. This column was main dishes. So those families only brought main dishes, and then they figured out between them what they were going to bring. Then this group was hot vegetables, and then they figured out what they were going to bring. This group was salads, raw fruit, raw vegetables, and salads of some sort, and in dips. And then this one was rarely even, in the beginning it was desserts, but eventually it just dropped off because no one even wanted them anymore. And so now that was a very balanced meal. So I was able to have my large salad, plenty of raw vegetables with a dip, and then maybe a soup or something, whatever they made. So now everybody can no one goes home with a war in their stomach. Yes.
All right, could you explain why you don't use oil, and what do you use for like a salad dressing? Because I'm stuck in a rut. I use lemon, salt, and olive oil, a good grade of olive oil.
So in what we like is the fat. So what we can do is we can make dressings out of cashews, sunflower seeds, tahini, olives, avocado. It's the fat, that makes it like so yummy and satiating. And so I often use a really, what I consider to be a really yummy, my favorite dressing uses tahini, lemon juice, garlic powder, onion powder, and a little bit of salt. And I think that's it.
And you blend it together.
And I blend it in my blender. Yep. And sometimes I'll use a cashew dressing with similar ingredients, but then I'll add like rosemary or thyme or dill. Love dill. So it just depends. I don't use oil because it wasn't in the Garden of Eden. It's not going to be in the new heaven and earth again. It's highly processed. It is not technically a food because it does not have it only is 100% fat, just like sugar. Sugar is 100% glucose, and oil is 100% fat with no protein, no fiber. It's not a natural. It doesn't come from the hand of the Lord anymore.
What about coconut milk?
What about what?
Coconut milk.
Walnut milk?
Coconut milk.
Coconut milk. Natural coconut milk? Yeah, no worries.
Like you make
Blend it in
your
the
own
blender.
coconut milk.
Yeah, I've made my own coconut milk. I just use water and the coconut shreds,
Ah, yes.
and you've got coconut milk.
What did you cook your granola with if you didn't use oil?
So instead of the oil for that, I use bananas, and I mush those, or I use applesauce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And for saute and onions, and you use just a little bit of water instead of the oil.
Yeah.
To saute vegetables.
Oh, praise the Lord.
Yeah, the only thing I ever use oil for is the spray that's used for waffles, because otherwise I've destroyed waffle irons.
No oil at all.
And I've tried it, and people say, they successfully use sesame seeds. I've tried that. I've ruined my waffle irons. I don't know, I just can't get it right. But I don't eat waffles very often anyway, so it doesn't really bother me. But yeah, I haven't eaten oil in 30 years. Now, there was a short time that I used it to pacify a new husband who ate differently than me, but eventually that went away too.
I can see now how we can eat through the times of no buy, no sell. It's very simple.
Very simple.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I thought you were holding up your hand.
Grocery store will lose.
What's that?
Grocery store will lose their income.
Yeah.
Us, all those in grocery store are not good for us.
Yes.
Uh,
I mean, it's 90% processed. And
Yes.
Yeah.
A long time ago, when I first started becoming gluten-free, gluten intolerant, I learned that you go into the grocery store and you go around the outside, fresh vegetables, and that's it. And then you walk out the store.
Yeah.
You never
Yep.
go up and down the aisle.
Exactly.
Go to the right.
There's truth to that because, and I never really noticed it until, or like really became aware, or that anyone would even notice. But we had a guest from Germany come stay with us for several weeks, and I would take her to the grocery store with me, and Costco, and I'd always go right to the produce department and right to the checkout line, and I mean, I was just doing my shopping. I didn't even think twice about it. That's just what I do. And she made comment to a friend of mine, or maybe it was to Perry, and she said, I now know how to shop. You just go right to the produce department and you go right out. She said, I've never seen anyone shop like that before.
I'm guessing, Dr. Unruh, that you don't eat too much tofu.
I personally don't eat much tofu. I started giving that up many years ago because it's processed. Yeah, I mean, I may, if Perry makes it a couple of times, a year, I might take a bite or two, but it just doesn't have any interest to me. It's just kind of repulsive to me now that my taste buds are so purified that it just doesn't even do anything for me. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had tofu in years and years, and then he made it a couple of days ago, and I took a couple of bites, and I'm like, this is just not for me. It just doesn't do anything for me anymore. Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and so I didn't really give it up on purpose. It just kind of happened. Yeah. Yes.
What about oatmeal and rice?
Oatmeal is wonderful. If you want oatmeal, go for it. Get the steel or the old-fashioned oatmeal.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
What about rice?
Rice is fine as well, as long as it's unprocessed. And but one of the things that we have to pay attention to with rice nowadays is with the arsenic, because a lot of rice has arsenic now. But you can get California rice that has been shown to be arsenic free. There's basmati rice has been shown to be arsenic free. But much of the other rice has arsenic in it, so I kind of stick to those. Yeah. But I'm not saying that, that you guys need to all of a sudden give this up, because I'm concerned by asking that kind of question. Oh, now that I found out that rice has arsenic, and now I know that how dirty strawberries are, I'm not going to eat strawberries and I'm not going to eat rice, but I'm going to continue eating my meat and my dairy and my eggs and my processed foods. See, that's my concern about these kinds of answers. So I want to give a more clear answer about that. I would never tell someone to give up brown rice that has arsenic in it before I tell them to give up meat or dairy or unclean foods or something like that. So, there's a hierarchy. We got to work with people. And because people aren't usually willing to give up everything overnight. Some people do that, but it doesn't happen very often. I mean, when I've given up things, yes, I gave up gluten, bam, from one moment to the next, I gave it up. But it wasn't the same time that I gave up meat, because I gave up meat, bam, 1 second to the next, I gave up meat. But they didn't happen at the same time. And so, it just takes time. It's a process that we have to find new recipes, we have to find new ways, things that we like. We have to, it is, of course, working with the Lord, because it's always righteousness by faith, right?
Amen.
It's not on our own, and recognizing that we are the temple of God.
Another question, what about coconut oil?
I don't use coconut oil. Same thing. It's just, it doesn't even matter if you're making your own coconut oil, if you're making your own olive oil, and you make it right at home and you eat it immediately, it's, which doesn't happen, but oils are oxidized. And by the time they reach the grocery store, they are well oxidized. And they create damage in the body. And I find it interesting that many of the plant-based secular voices that are out there, no oil. They are way advanced than we are as a movement. You know, we're still battling with, you know, well, Jesus ate fish, so I'm going to eat fish. You know, we're still battling with the oil, and we're still battling with the spices. Well, the research says that I can drink a cup of coffee a day. It's going to reduce my risk of diabetes, and I can have cinnamon. And we're battling with all this, and the world says no. You know, we're told that you know, we're the tail. We're supposed to be the head. But, you know, we have the audacity to think that we're still the head because the world is so far advanced from us, we can't even see the tail anymore. We're so far behind. But we need to catch up, and we will. We will be that light that stands on a hill. We have to get back to that. You read that. God is trying to take us back to where we were.
And when we close in prayer, we all need prayer. But I would like to suggest that we ask Sister Leslie to lead us out in health reform in our churches. I think she's the closest to what you do in her way of diet.
She's amazing.
Yeah, so we need her to lead us out.
You willing to do that?
One day at a time.
We're going to pray for you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Unruh, for coming. What a blessing.
Amen. Amen.
Praise the Lord.